Nope, it's working now. It's,
Is it?
it says it's working.
Let me refresh so I can see. Yeah,
So
there
I
we
think
go.
so. Great. So I just needed to restart my machine. Fantastic.
There we go.
Let's see. Okay. Welcome back to the stream, everyone. There was some technical difficulties. Had to restart the machine because it's old. Which, by the way, if there's any angel investors out there that want to buy me a new machine, that would be great. Hello, PenCap. And thanks to my good friend Kiwi here, she informed me that my stream was down, and I got to
Yeah.
work on fixing it as fast as possible. And she's here to sing us a song from her homeland because she's in such
No.
good condition to do so.
No. I'm
No?
not doing that. No.
Oh.
I'm in no condition for singing. Alright, well, good luck with this stream. I will take my leave.
Okay, thanks, Kiwi.
No problem. Have a good one.
Have a
Bye.
good one. Stay hydrated. Anyways, we're back. I don't remember any of the questions that were asked, if there were any questions that were asked, so you may have to, if your question didn't get answered, please type it out again, and I will read it off. Matter of fact, one of my INFP friends is playing Dark Tide right now. Oops. There we go. And yes, last I remember, Envy, you're if wondering whether or not you are correct about your understanding of people, whether or not you're typing them correctly, find out if how often you're typing people correlates with the theme of the frequency charts for personality types. So, as I was saying, introverted sensors should make up roughly half the people you meet in public, and in some cases, many more. Like there's some small towns in the United States where virtually all the people that I met had a strong preference for introverted sensing. Like there was a lot of them. Like in some small towns where they still like close down roads in the town just so they can have parades or like farmers markets kind of things. A lot of them where being an introverted sensor is more or less just it's being a regular person. You go to work. Well, I mean that's the wrong thing to say because you do some kind of work for sure. So not colloquially you get up and you do your 9 to 5 kind of thing, but they follow their responsibilities that they're supposed to be doing in whatever community it is that they are in. That's what I would tell Lady V. I would say she had the same problem that I had when it came to typing introverted sensors. I say introverted sensors oftentimes come off as regular people. They go to school, they do well enough in school, they may go to college, they work their jobs, and they live their lives, as just normal, nothing weird, nothing out of the ordinary. So, for example, ESFPs love talking, as an example, and that sticks out to a lot of people when someone just keeps talking and they don't shut up about anything. Like they'll just bounce from subject to subject and just keep talking, not really caring if people are listening. Extroverted sensor, well, not in general, but ESFPs, they love to keep talking, and that sticks out like a sore thumb when someone is just being overly talky, possibly annoying people. Even then, that's not normal behavior. That person has a strong preference for extroverted sensing. So, but introverted sensing preference people, they more often than not try to have a conversation back and forth. More often than not, unless of course they're ESTJs, they have this thing called ESTJ story time, and that's where they want to keep talking about what they learned, their past experiences, their stories, and they don't want to let people go. Now that most often though you'll see that in the elder ESTJs, but you can still see that in some of the younger ones. So yes, even so, when someone's not behaving like most other people behave, you'll see that there is a strong preference for either extroverted sensing or extroverted intuition or introverted intuition because they're not being normal. They're going above and beyond, or they're not behaving like the other people should be. They're different. But introverted sensing people try to live most normal lives. They'll graduate the college if assuming they need to, and they'll have a job. They'll work that job for a long period of time, kind of thing. And which, by the way, introverted sensing is what keeps civilization going. So it's not a bad thing. We need a preponderance of introverted sensors for our societies so that it can continue existing. ESTJ story time. The J, or well, yeah, ESTJ story time. ESTPs like telling stories, but they want to tell stories that are fun. They want to make sure that whatever they're going to say is going to be entertaining. They want people to like them when they talk, and so they take that into a large. That's a huge consideration for an ESTP. If they're talking a lot, they want to make sure that other people are listening and engaged in the conversation. And if they believe that it's something that people aren't going to be engaged in, then they just don't say anything. Maybe a quip here and there to make people laugh, but then they go back to, you know, doing whatever it is that they're doing.
Oh, blessed
So,
Omnissiah, favor this tool of war.
which is it's fun because when it came to so that was my understanding of extroverted sensing preference to people is that they specifically ESFPs and ESTPs they like to talk. They're very chatty people, and that was my experience with people that I typed as ESTP or ESFP. They do like talking, and it was very interesting because when I read the updated language on the Myers-Briggs.org definitions, it specifically states that they are very talkative. That extroverted sensing is very talkative, and so it was fun to read that and go, oh, see what I had figured out for extroverted sensors, they also figured out and then updated the language for it. So just another bit of evidence that perhaps I was on the right track when it came to understanding practical MBTI. So, and that's a valid question, by the way, NV, to ask someone how they know that they are correct. It was just through years of practice, years of experiments, obsessing over, MBTI in short bursts throughout 10 years. Because there's just so many games to play in 10 years. You can't always be doing MBTI, but when you get far enough into MBTI, then when you start playing, new video game, like you're playing a single player game and you're going on an adventure, you start typing people. Now, someone recently who had a very poor understanding of cognitive functions, uh, they they essentially believed that if someone has a strong preference for introverted intuition, that they're never physical, or that it's so impossible for them to get physical with people. They had a very poor understanding of it, and I'm not sure why they believe that. I couldn't I didn't push too far into it because we were already having some disagreements already, and so I didn't want to necessarily go into that particular thing. But Batman. Now, of course, when it comes to this person that I was disagreeing with, this person that I disagreed with had a very strong preference for extroverted thinking, very very strong, even to the point where they need other people around them to agree with them, and if they didn't have people around to agree with what their belief was, they felt very uncomfortable in expressing it. And so they believed that, for example, it was impossible for John Wick to be an INTJ. No, well, that's how I type John Wick. There were some moments in which I wanted to type him an ISTJ for the introverted sensing preference, but I don't believe that an ISTJ would go out of their way to start killing people because they killed their dog, and then continue to go forward because they needed to stay alive because that's what they told their wife and things like that. The behavior of John Wick was congruent with my understanding of introverted intuition, and then of course extroverted thinking, and then introverted feeling, and then at the end of it, extroverted sensing. But does anyone remember Batman? I remember Batman. Batman is now of course, who cares what everyone else thinks, but Batman is considered to be widely considered to be an INTJ, and I don't even think that that person that disagreed with me would disagree that Batman was not an INTJ. At least I would hope not. And I don't know if you know this about Batman. Batman gets very physical very regularly with people. So on the subject of whether or not INTJs can get physical, Batman. It's for some reason he believed that certain personality types just don't ever get physical, I guess, and that things like training doesn't exist, and that apparently it's impossible to train certain personalities to behave in certain ways, which is obviously silly. But anyway, not even sure where I was going with that. What types are confrontational or more comfortable with it? So which types are confrontational and which types are more comfortable with being confrontational? I think that people have varying levels of comfortability when it comes to confrontation based on life experience, what they're currently going through, etc. Some people want to just put their chips on the table and hope that they win. So I think ENTJs aren't going to have a problem being confrontational in most situations. Same goes with INTJs and necessarily being confrontational, but it's about very specific things. So if an INTJ is told that, okay, these are the tasks, these are the things that need to get done in the workplace, they don't need to be confrontational about it. However, I have known INTJs, when you step over the line and when you start crossing into what they believe, on a personal level, like their personal codes of ethics, morals, values, etc., when you cross over those things, they tend to get confrontational. So when you attack their ideas and you say that idea doesn't work, I know that you spent the last week trying to come up with this idea for this thing. That's dumb. You're not taking into the perspectives of this or that. That's once again crossing a line. You will get confrontational with them. What types would argue with their spouse in the middle of work and not concerned with people hearing or seeing it? So there is I have seen ESFJs get argumentative with a spouse in the workplace. I've literally seen that exact scenario, in that if she needs to, typically it's female, typically ESFJs are female. And so if she needs to be assertive in that moment to assert dominance in that particular situation, she may decide to argue. Like if she's fed up, she's had enough of someone's behavior, because ESFJs get irritated with people in the same way that ISFJs get irritated with people. They can have these moments, but on a normal level, ESFJs are not going to be perpetually arguing with their spouse in the workplace. That's once in a while, if they're just having a bad day or they've had a series of bad days, they might explode and kind of go a little more than they normally would. But generally speaking, they're not going to do that. They would rather pull people aside so that other people don't have to watch. They want to make sure that everything is good between people. They don't want their actions towards someone to be perceived as negative, and so the best way to do that is to do something in private. Which ones would argue? People that really don't care, or people that have very little in the way of perspective. So ESFPs tend to want to argue in public settings because in many cases they just enjoy the attention that other people will give them during the argument. Let's see. I have seen INTJs do things like that in public. I guess, first of all, doing that kind of a thing in public is showing a great degree of introverted feeling. and certainly a lack of extroverted feeling. So types that are higher up on extroverted feeling are far less likely to create some kind of public display. Far less likely. Like it's almost essentially like it's not going to happen in terms of public spectacle. That's something they're going to avoid. Introverted feeling people, though, that's where you're going to see it more often. Like me, for example, I will not have emotional. I won't even deal with emotional outbursts in public. If there is someone that I know that's having an emotional time, I would do, in public. I will say, okay, let's talk about something somewhere else. Like, let's go to the car. Let's go on a drive. We'll go home. We'll do something other than have this emotional display going on right now. And in some cases, I've of course dated some females who have no issues being that way in public, and I have straight up walked away in public. I'm like, I'm not doing this. No, it's not going to happen. Now, assuming that I ever got married, if I had gotten married to someone that for some reason preferred to have these emotional outbursts in public aimed at me, I would leave. I would walk away. I'm not going to have that argument there. That is too risky for too many reasons. It's not going to happen. But types that would argue in public overly, I would imagine that an INFP, for example, might do that. What types do you think wouldn't care about throwing someone under the bus if it makes them look good, even if it ruins their relationship with that person? There are a few personalities that would do that. Let me think. So, of course, the first one to come to mind is ESFPs. They typically care more about feeling good than they do about necessarily other people. We got INTJs, especially ones that believe that the ones that don't have friends, really, the ones that don't spend a lot of time with other people, those ones will throw into the bus. ENTJs, of course, that's obvious. ENTJs guaranteed will throw you under the bus for their own personal gain. Not much of an issue. I would like to theorize that ENTJs still wouldn't do that to, let's say, their children. They could probably rationalize it as, well, other people would think of me as a poor person or as a bad father or a bad parent in general, and so they wouldn't throw their children under the bus. Maybe theorize, but that for an ENTJ, it's all about, risk reward kind of thing. So that could change. ISTJs, I don't see that happen very often, especially if it's someone that they like, which ISTJs don't typically like a whole lot of people, because for an ISTJ, they do still have a conscience, and with that conscience comes a memory for the things that they've done, and so they would be plagued with the memory of throwing someone under the bus, and that could do damage to them for many years. So I don't see them do that very often. Let's see. Now, as for me, I don't like throwing people. I don't do that. Like I personally don't throw people under the bus, because usually the gains for throwing someone under the bus is things that I don't care about. Like, if I were to make someone look really bad so that I could gain an extra $200 a week at work, that's not worth it. Not worth my time. I prefer people to like me rather than to hate me in general. Even people that have done wrong by me, I oftentimes say, look, water under the bridge. Let's go back to normal. Let's try and be friends. Let's do that. Granted, this is my fault, okay? But before I continue on, just remember, this is my fault, and I don't blame this person for doing what they did. There was a young man who spit on the windshield of my car while I was in the house. I was at someone's. We were having a get together, but I had wronged this person, and of course it was relationship related things, and I'll try not to go any further than that. And although he was civil, he didn't like me, understandably so. And I didn't blame him for that, but he went outside and he spit on the windshield of my car. Okay. Months later, obviously we didn't spend a lot of time together. And months later, though, I tried to be friends with him. I'm like, look, it's water under the bridge. I know that you did what you did, and that's understandable. And, I probably deserved that. And can we be friends? Can we reconcile? Is there anything that we can do to, fix it? And we ended up just, eventually when we, parted ways later on, it was amicable. And so even people that typically do me wrong, I will still try to be friends with afterwards, because you got this one life. We all live in the same terrible reality, and most people we're all animals, and we're just doing our best to handle situations as they arise. And so if someone does something, negative towards me, unless it's something really, really bad, then I tend to let it go. I've forgiven some things most people wouldn't be. It's because I don't care. It's not a big deal. Exactly. So for an ENTP, life is a game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you do your best to have fun. And so, like I said, someone spat on my car and probably said some very negative things about me. And I'm like, look, I'm willing to let it go. Are you? Kind of a thing. I can count on one hand the number of people that I don't forgive. Just one hand. Out of the thousands and thousands of people that I have met and have been personal with for varying lengths of time, 5 people that I don't forgive. Or not 5 people, less than 5 people. On one hand, I can count the number of people that I do not forgive. Yes, it is easier to just get along and move on. Yes, 100%. It is better that way. You've probably been asked this before, but are you into socionics? No, I'm not into socionics. I don't need to. So what MBTI normally I wouldn't care about not astrology, but I normally wouldn't care about typologies, because when people try to tell me about typology, say, oh, it's because this person acts this way because of this, or they act that way because of that, I would say that I trust my own understanding of people. I trust that. I've had too much experience with it to not trust it. It has gotten me this far in life. If I didn't have my understanding of people, I would be dead by now. Or I would have been more self-sufficient in that regard. But point being that it's because of my preference for people that I have gotten as far along as I have. And so MBTI, the only reason that as I said earlier, the only reason that I gave it any interest or any portion of my time is because when I read the cognitive function definitions, I found a strange parallel between what I understood about people and what they understood about people. And I'm like, okay, let's read a little bit more about this, because it's more broad, it's basic stuff. This allows me to have a general understanding of someone, and then be able to finite understand them later on as I learn more about them. Then I can pick out the finite details. But so essentially I use MBTI to help me categorize what I already knew about people. Socionics, as far as I'm aware, it tries to take it steps further, and it really tries to gain a deeper understanding of people you barely know. And as I said, the more high resolution you get, the more likely you are to be incorrect. So in socionics, there is a lot of stuff that's involved in that. As people say, it's a bit more complicated, and that's fine. But if I were to jump into any new typology, it would be that one that I create. It would be my own personal understanding of people, and then I would try to push that out there. I wouldn't go into socionics. I would street urchinonics. That's what I would do. And so I'm not into a lot of typologies. I don't subscribe to sociology. I don't subscribe to astrology or Enneagram or any of the other ones that are out there. I would rather just I would rather just go with my understanding of people than to do that. And as I said, MBTI, I decided to look into it simply because it was broad enough so that I could categorize general behaviors of people so that I could then later finite understand people. So MBTI is just broad and accurate enough to be useful based on my understanding of humans. So now when I see someone articulating their thoughts and explaining to me why they believe what they believe in their own original words, I say, oh, that's introverted thinking. So now I know that if this person has let's say I found them to have a strong preference for introverted thinking, they're either in the first or second position, then they're either going to be, an ENTP, or they'll be an ESTP, INTP, ISTP. And then I can predict other parts of their behavior. So if it's an INTP that I'm talking about, I also assume that they know a great deal of random, weird, wacky trivia about things that most people don't care about. An example. And so far, that has been true. And they'd like to, and for INTPs that consider you a friend, they'll do that a lot. Even if you don't care, they will still tell you about, how many planes were shot down in World War II, or when's the next Renaissance Festival, or different burger joints that have multiple different ways to kill you via heart attack. Like random, or I can talk to them about quantum mechanics, black holes, coding things, talk about 3D modeling in some instances. They'll talk about anything and actually have somewhat of an understanding of what you're talking about. So far, that has been the case. And then if I talk to another ENTP, turns out they know a lot about people, and that has been that has not been incorrect. And any person that I have typed as an ENTP, that's what they like to talk about. They loved, especially the young ones, they like to talk about manipulating people. They want to know more about the psychology of people. That has been the case. Now, is it all consuming of their life? Certainly not. They do other things, but they do have a particular interest when it comes to people, and they tend to rebel and, do things that other people don't do. And for some reason, this person is walking in circles around me. Good for them. Anyway, yes, it's super helpful. Just the same, I know that I know when I'm talking to someone who preferences introverted feeling. They want to talk about things that they like or that they're interested in, which is fine. They'll tell me about the things that they read, the things that they believe in, so on and so forth. And so that means that there are certain subjects I don't get, I wouldn't broach with someone who has a preference for introverted feeling, just so that we can maintain a civil connection. How do you distinguish ISTPs and ISFPs and ISFP and ESFPs? Okay, so how do I distinguish ISTPs and ISFPs? ISTPs, like most people that enjoy arguing, they are always looking to see if what you say makes sense to them, and they point out inconsistencies in the logic. They speak of it as a very matter-of-fact kind of expression. They don't say things like, "Oh, well, I feel like that's probably not right." And that's not what they're going to say. They're going to say, "Okay, what you just said was not right because of this, 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 and this. That doesn't make sense. This does not track." And that's what they're going to focus on. They do that more often than not. Whereas, and that's for the ISTP. They're also often, in many cases, in real life, that is, in many cases, they will be a little bit quieter. Not quiet. Let me rephrase that. They won't speak necessarily as much as, let's say, an ESTP. ESTPs like to talk because they want to entertain people. ISTPs want to talk when they have something that's bugging them on that logical level, and then they will speak out and say that, okay, what you said doesn't make sense because of this, 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 and this. ISFPs, though, unless you're talking about something emotional, something ethically related, etc., they tend to not talk. If you're going into straight logical discussion, let's say you're talking about philosophy, talking about politics, things like that, they tend to not say anything. And if you try to ask them about their opinion, they'll say, you know, oftentimes you'll get, I don't know, or I don't care in some cases. You know, or they'll say that, well, that doesn't interest me, that sort of a thing, because they really have nothing to say about it. They're too afraid, because of extroverted thinking in the fourth position, they are actually concerned that if they say something and they something that they've read someplace or what they've learned from other people, it may be taken as wrong. And so they tend to not want to say anything. But if you're talking about something moral, like how cute are puppies on a scale of 1 to 10, ISFP will have something to say about it. As an example, something you talk about, something more subjective, and they'll have something to say about it. If you start talking objective, they tend to not say anything at all, for ISFPs. Now, how do I distinguish ISFPs from ESFPs? Well, you'll know that ISFPs, as I said, if you're talking about logic, you know, not necessarily logic, but objective things, they tend to not talk a lot. ESFPs will be talking a lot regardless of what you're talking about. It doesn't matter. You talk about how they feel about things. You can talk about what, you know, other people think about things. You know, whether it's objective or subjective, they'll just be talking. Talk, and they don't know. They literally, seemingly don't know when to shut up. And I suppose that doesn't come to them until much later in life. So, ISTPs would prefer to talk about objective things and not really as much on the subjective. ISFPs would rather talk about the subjective than the objective, and ESFPs just talk. And they'll tell you about how they feel about things, and in the same token, the next sentence, they'll tell you about what they read about something or what these other people said about things. They'll whether it's objective or subjective, they'll just talk, and whether or not anyone's listening, they will talk. Matter of fact, in one particular instance, I was down in California. I was visiting, I guess that would be my ex-stepmother, I guess, one of my father's ex-wives. And so she was more of a mother to me than any other adult in my life. So I would go down there and visit. She had 2 more kids after her and my father were divorced. And she had an ESFP daughter, the oldest of the new marriage. She was about, I think she was like 10 or 11, and I was explaining to the stepmother that, okay, well, your daughter is this personality. She's an ESFP, so this is what she focuses on. This is how she reacts to things. This is what she cares about, what she doesn't care about, stuff like that. And so she was acting out, as an ESFP might do, especially in that particular household. And I said, if you want her to calm down, you need to remove the external stimuli from her, like from her environment. All right. If you want to get her to calm down and get her to be more controllable, then you need to control what she's able to interact with. If she can't interact with her environment, or if it's not interesting, it doesn't make her feel good, then she starts to shut down, because that's what an ESFP is. And she's like, okay, well, of course, my stepmother was an ESFJ, so she didn't necessarily believe me. She's like, okay, well, let's just try it, just to see if it works. She sent her 11-year-old to her room. She fell asleep in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. There was nothing fun in that room for her. That's why she didn't want to be in there. So when an ESFP is confronted with a lack of external stimuli, they start getting very bored. They start becoming very disinterested in their environment. Passed right out. And then she comes out, after checking on her, she comes to me, and she stops in the hallway, and she looks at me and just shakes her head, and she's like, effing street urchin. And of course she didn't say street urchin, but she was impressed that I knew that and that it worked. So, an example of how to manage certain children based on certain personalities. Now, that same process, that same manner of punishment, which, by the way, was just sending a child to their room, that will work on an extroverted sensing child more often than not. That will work. do not send an extroverted intuitive child to their room and think that that's going to be an adequate enough punishment because the extroverted intuitive child does not live in the real world. They live in here. Here is where anything is possible in here. And so all you've done is sent them to their happy place. So you send them to their happy place. It's not really punishing. If you want to punish an extroverted intuitive child, you like really punish them, like something that they really hate doing, send them out to do manual labor where they actually have to focus on doing the manual labor, not something they can just autopilot. No. It's got to be specific, something that they need to focus on. That is how you torture a child, an extroverted intuitive child, and punishment wise, like that is what's going to work. So you can, to a degree, type based on what people are talking about. Well, to a degree, most certainly. So if I'm just minding my own business and then suddenly someone comes at me telling me about how do these shoes look on me, or how does this shirt look? Like, is this a good enough color? What do you think about this color? Things like that. When they're talking about the like visual aesthetics of things, it's extroverted sensing. When they came out of nowhere and they started bombarding me with the stuff, that is crap I don't care about. I do not care about. Anyone that knows me knows that I don't care about that. And so you come at me with that stuff, you're showing me what your preference is. Your preference is extroverted sensing. Got it. So, but if I've got someone that comes into me, or not comes into me, that's a weird phrase. If someone comes into my room and starts telling me about, oh, did you hear about what they discovered in quantum mechanics? Did you hear about the new technology that they created? Did you hear about that new quantum supercomputer? Or did you hear about the new way to refrigerate certain processors, like new cooling systems, things like that? Okay, well, now you're coming at me with abstract stuff that does not involve real life at all, not in any practical manner. Okay, you're coming at me with extroverted intuition. Great. Or in some cases, if someone comes at me and they're like, I just broke up with so and so, and I'm just so sad. It's probably because I did this thing all that time ago, and he obviously felt bad about it, but I didn't notice it. Okay, you're coming at me with your feelings. So you're coming at me with introverted feeling. And if that happens, and for all those examples, if that's mostly what happens when that person is interacting with you, you now understand what their preferences are. So. Let's see. I am ENTP. The function ENP were about 80% or more, but the T function was just about 55%, and this is in many tests, so I suspect could be ENFP instead. How do you distinguish between an ENTP and an ENFP? I found that in terms of, now once again, we're talking about practical MBTI. We're talking about how you're seeing this stuff manifest in real life. ENFPs will get off their ass and do stuff. They will go to college. They will try to finish it. They will pay attention in school to a fair degree, far more than the ENTP will do. ENTPs, that's the problem with introverted thinking, is that you're always going to be thinking about whether or not you are learning things that are even correct. And then you'll try to come to your own personal understanding of things. And while you're doing that as an ENTP, the ENFPs are moving forward in life. They're absorbing the knowledge. They don't necessarily question it a whole lot, and then they keep going. So that's generally how I notice the ENFPs. Now, when I talk to, let's say, my ENFP father, he likes to bring up things that are bad, especially when it comes to things like politics or society at large. He wants to talk to me about how it's bad and how it's ruining people's lives, and this is bad for these reasons, and so on and so forth. My brother, ENFP, just a damn near carbon copy of my father in terms of cognitive functions. He talks about his work and all the kids that essentially get left behind in society, and he's the one that has to take care of them now, and manage them, that kind of a thing. They start to lean on the ethical portions of whatever it is that they're talking about, whether it's politics, whether it's people in general, whether or not they made someone feel good because they got them some very specific toy. When in candid conversation, ENFP tends to lean towards how things feel about things. They don't spend a lot of time trying to articulate to me why it is that they believe that, because for them, they don't need to articulate why they feel bad about something or why they feel good about something. They just do. So it's that articulation. But as I said, in a more practical sense, ENFPs will actually work. They take what they learn and apply it for success. They want to achieve it. They want to finish the job, kind of a thing. So that's how I would. So ENFP actually does stuff. ENTP is like the ultimate lazy personality. Like you can't get any lazier than being an ENTP. So let's see here. When you went to college for a brief time was and before I go continue, MS. I so which by the way your name's MS. Is that do you mean multiple sclerosis or is it something? It's probably something else. Those online tests are bad. They're bad for two reasons. Well, and I'll just talk about the main two reasons. One, most of those tests they associate certain answers with the wrong cognitive function, and two, most people have a problem looking at their aggregate behavior in a more objective manner, and so they tend to mistype themselves when they're taking those tests. Anyway, moving on. When you went to college for a brief time, was it for psychology? It was for psychology. I wasn't there for very long. How does extroverted intuition versus introverted intuitive argument look like? That's I don't know if I could describe that in a necessarily well. I'll try my best. I'll just try to talk about it like in a vacuum setting. It's just extroverted intuition by itself, introverted intuition by itself. Extroverted intuition, all ideas, all possibilities, anything's possible, etc. When having an argument, so they want the other person to see all the possibilities in which they could be right or wrong. Introverted intuitive argument's going to look like, I've invested this time thinking about this thing, so it must be right. And to their credit, it could be. Now, that hasn't been my experience with introverted intuitives, but it could be right, could be wrong. Extroverted intuition is going to think, well, what are all the possibilities of whether it could be right or wrong? And so that's try to talk about them in a vacuum, I suppose. Don't bother arguing with an introverted intuitive unless you're on like good terms with them, because if there's any kind of negativity going on between you, they're just going to automatically assume that you're a dipshit and that they're right about everything. So just don't bother arguing with them, because you're not going to make a lot of headway. And even when it comes to introverted intuitives, even when they're proven wrong, they still would rather trust their own judgment than yours. So, don't argue with them. Extroverted intuitives, go ahead and argue with them. I don't think it necessarily gets super bad unless you're arguing with maybe like an INFP who really believes that certain ethical or moral values should be held much higher than other ones. Then it might get a little spicy. But outside of that, I think it's okay to argue with an extroverted intuitive. What do you do for a living as an ENTP? I assume you had lots of careers. Well, a career is something that you kind of you focus on with the intent of doing it for a very, very, very long period of time. Like that's your career. That's this chosen profession that you're going to have for the rest of your life. If I'm going to have a career, it's going to be right here on YouTube. If I'm going to have a career, I've had lots of jobs, most certainly. Most of the time, I get around by doing under the table work and getting in good with people. Trying not to be a bother. Like right now, I'm on a stint of here in Silver Springs, Nevada, but I could be, next week I could be in Oregon, someplace else. So, yeah, I don't usually have a problem getting a hold of enough to stay alive. That's generally how I've lived my life. I just kind of stay alive, and then I spend my free time learning about something new, or engaging in a new adventure on a video game, or talking with people, getting to know new people in the area, then finding, like little jobs here that I can do. And, you do need your computer fixed. I can do both hardware and software. I can put a computer together for you. If you just want my time and attention, if you want things that are not YouTube appropriate, we can talk about that too. For things like that. That's mostly how I've gotten around. I live a generally very nomadic lifestyle. I'm never in one place for, oftentimes I'm not in a place for particularly long. But like, for example, I was in Missouri for about 5 years. That was after my adult life, or after I became an adult, that is the longest I'd ever stayed in one place. I stayed in one town in Missouri for 5 years. And that is the longest that I've ever been in one place. And I didn't want to be there for 5 years, but I kind of got stuck there. So right now I do whatever jobs I can get a hold of. Usually they're under the table jobs, and you make a little bit of money. I'm making money doing YouTube. I make money doing typings for people. Do things like that. And I hopefully very soon I can pull in, get some more income through the YouTube, because I definitely need to get some new computer parts. I'm still using a 1070 Ti graphics card, so, and if you know what that is, you'll know that that's a very old graphics card. I'm surprised that I can run the games that I can run now. Now, granted, I have to run most games on incredibly low settings, but speaking of which, we'll get to actually doing a match here. Do you think an ISFP would be more argumentative and opinionated than an INFP? I don't think so. That has not been my experience with INFPs. Or however, you know what I would say is that ISFPs, personally, I don't get them as argumentative. Not nearly as often. It seems that, this is, of course, most of the ISFPs I met were female. And so, in that sense, they are less likely to argue with me. Just personally, me. They're less likely to argue with me, but they'll argue with other people, especially, and as they get older, they tend to argue more. But once again, it's where you're, talking about something morally or ethically suspect, then they can be argumentative and opinionated. INFPs tended to argue with me a little bit more. They're not as, they don't seem to be as mesmerized by whatever counts as charisma that I exude. Less mesmerized. So, but that doesn't mean that they would argue with me a whole lot or anything. But like, let's say I'm talking to an ISFP and an INFP for a total of 2 weeks. Maybe the INFP will argue with me, one more time than the ISFP would argue with me. So it's not like by some insanely huge margin. Do ISTPs tend to be interested in politics? A lot of them have been. I noticed over the the course of my life, even as short a jump as in the past, let's say 10 to 12 years, I have noticed that there are more ISTPs that are engaged in politics, and I think that's because that's kind of the agenda here in the United States, is to get the right people more invested in politics and sway them to their side about things. And so I think that the ISTPs I've known recently are much more interested in politics. Whereas if you talk to my grandfather Wheaton, ISTP, born in like the 40s or 50s, he's old. He's like 70 something now. He does not care about politics at all, and I don't think that when he was growing up he had a care of politics either. But it seems like lately, yeah, because there's just a lot of weird things going on politically right now. People are making some very strange decisions in terms of like legislation. And so that's going to bother, that'll bother the younger ISTPs who are being told about it far more often than the older ISTPs that, that grew up in times where no one really cared about politics. So, woo, explosions. Oh, I looked away and got knocked down. I recently had an argument with my INTJ mom, and that did not go well at all. I was basically trying to convince her that being an extrovert type didn't necessarily mean social extroversion. There's nothing really to argue about then, is there? Yep. Well, I wouldn't, especially the older extroverted thinkers, I wouldn't even bother trying to talk with them about MBTI or typologies in general. The older someone gets, the more solidified they are in their extroverted thinking. And so if they grow up, or if they've lived their life around people that also, generally understood that logically speaking typology was nonsense, psychology was nonsense, good luck trying to convince them that it's not.
Think I've got a hole in my boots.
Do extroverted, intuitive, dominant peoples deal with having a lot of vanity? I don't think that's inherent. I think that, for example, I'm not hyper vain or anything like that, but I do care in a very general sense of my appearance because I found that if people find you physically attractive, they tend to treat you better. So that was my personal understanding. I don't think I have a problem with vanity. For example, when I was living in Edgewood, New Mexico, I didn't have an issue walking into the Walmart with a wife beater, pajama pants, and flip-flops as my attire. And I certainly do not, mess with my hair. I just kind of wake up, run my hands through it, and go outside. So, I don't go out of my way. I don't use skincare products, even though I probably should. I don't wear, you can see, I don't wear makeup in general, obviously. So I don't have that much of an issue with it. However, a female ENTP may care a little bit more about it. Being female, they are aware that most of their value is seen through their physical appearance. And so they're going to care a lot more about that than I would. So I don't think it's inherent that extroverted intuitives have a problem with vanity. You're talking more extroverted sensing, ESFPs, ESTPs. They're gonna have more of a concern with how they look. And my cousin, for example, ESTP, I remember seeing his haircut, and he had like the man bun thing going on. He lives in Oregon, mind you. And I was like, what's with the haircut? I'm like, what is that? And he's like, oh yeah, it's the new hipster thing that everyone's wearing, out right now. And so that's what's attractive. So yeah, he doesn't have he cares obviously about his physical appearance, and rightly so. I think most people should generally care about your their physical appearance, because that's how you're going to get along easier in life. The prettier you are, the easier life will be for you. What's the best argument you've ever had with an introverted feeler? I don't like having arguments with people as much as I used to when I was much younger. Because if you're having an argument, this is how I describe an argument. One person's right, one person's wrong. That is how I describe an argument. So I don't think I've had best arguments, and in that case, I'm not sure what would be best. Like I've heard an argument that was good, like that maybe wasn't so. That would maybe a little more open-ended of an argument, or was it the best argument because they had the most emotional responses to what was being said? So that would be a tough one to answer. I don't, as I've said, I prefer not to deal in opinion. So literally, if I were to say what was the best one, that would be strictly my opinion. But I would say that I've never had good arguments with introverted feelers. I have not had good arguments. I don't like to argue with introverted feelers simply due to the fact that you're essentially talking apples and oranges at that point. If you're trying to come at it from a more logical, objective approach to a situation, well, they're going to be coming at it from a completely different approach. And how you feel about something is never objectively wrong. You just feel bad about something. So I don't. I do not argue as much. I learned earlier on that you just don't argue with someone who has a preference for introverted feeling. You're not going to get anywhere anytime soon. And even if they acquiesce and decide that, and then just tell you they agree with you, they're lying. They don't agree with you. They just want the conversation to be over. So, best conversation I've had with an introverted feeler. Once again, I don't know what the best one would have been. I just had a lot of different conversations with introverted feelers. And I don't mind, especially if we're talking about more adult things, how they feel about certain things. Like it's getting to know more about them, so I don't have an issue with that. As long as it's, as long as the conversations are generally 18+ conversations, I don't think they're usually very bad. Let's see. Do you think those with extroverted sensing might have an easier time falling asleep than those with extroverted intuition? I think everyone has trouble sleeping from time to time, and I think it happens a lot less often to someone with a strong preference for extroverted sensing. Yes. I think it does happen a lot less often. I've known a number of introverted preference sensors, which, of course, as I've said before, is a majority of the population, that have trouble sleeping. Now, granted, a lot of them go for the pills to continue trying to sleep on a more normal schedule. But when you're plagued with introverted sensing, you're always thinking about bad things that may have happened that day, or good things in some cases. Like, I've known some ISTJs that were like, I was just so happy about today, or I was so excited about today, that all I can do is keep replaying it over and over in my head. There you go. And you're going to have problems sleeping. So, yes, but to get to the crux of the question there, I would think that it's been my experience that extroverted sensors have a lot less of an issue sleeping. Yes. But, as I said, people can have trouble sleeping from time to time. It just happens less often to extroverted sensors. Let's see. In my opinion, an argument is usually two people just misunderstanding each other. They straight up can be arguing the same point sometimes. Yeah, I think that happens too. That is something that can happen. But yeah, arguments. Someone's wrong, generally speaking. If two people just believe that one thing is better than the other, then they're just having a difference in opinion, and not so much of an argument. And they're not somehow grasping that they're just having a difference of opinion. Which I've seen that. Have you ever seen two ESFPs argue with each other? Whoa. Boy, that's painful. Oh, sniper! Let's see. I'm glad you could join us today, Bob. Let's see. What else do we got here? And if you have an INTJ mother, then I have sympathy for you, depending on what your personality type is. If you are an ENTP and you have an INTJ mother, then you are not having a fun childhood. So, and I hope it gets better for you. Can ESTPs be pushy and boundary crossing, or would ESFPs do that more? I think that ESTPs tend to not push boundaries as often. They are aware of they're far more aware of the risk-reward analysis. And so oftentimes pushing boundaries can lead to bad things happening. However, there are some very specific moments in which it's not so bad. But in terms of bossy, I've not known ESTPs to be hyper bossy people at all. They're just like, yep, you do you, I'll do my thing. And if you think that you have a better way of doing it, then you go for it, kind of thing. They're very chill people, typically. ESFPs tend to be more boundary crossing. They tend to be a little bit, I don't know about bossy necessarily. They do seem to prefer trying to give orders to people more often than not. But when they do that, it's not like a conscious thing. They're not actively trying to be that way or cross boundaries. It's because they aren't aware that they're crossing boundaries. So they don't do it on purpose, and of course it's not really their fault. That's just how their brain's wired. Things that you can't really change that about anyone. Yep, I hope it gets better. It won't get better, but I can still pretend to hope for you. So. There's a sniper down that way. You got him. Alright. Let's see. Been busy playing Cyberpunk, but taking a break to be here now. Well, that's sweet of you to take time, because I would not be taking a break from Cyberpunk to come talk to me on stream, so you're a sweetheart. Cyberpunk, it's one of the few games. I have a finite number of games that I always recommend that anyone should be playing or should try out, and Cyberpunk is absolutely one of those. Lots of options, lots of choices to make, how they affect your gameplay. You know, lots of abilities, ways to play the game. I always play in my Cyberpunk games. I enjoy playing a detective kind of thing. So, you know, I level up a lot of skills involved with finding secrets and determining the motivations of people, why they do what they do, finding clues, solving storylines, etc., etc. So I usually play some kind of private eye kind of character, so it's always pistols. I didn't need any more than that in Cyberpunk, it seemed like. Pistols, suppressed if necessary, sneak around a lot, hack devices, things like that. So, and that's just how I decided to play it. More non-combative if possible. And that's just one of the possibly thousands of ways in which you could play Cyberpunk. So I recommend that everyone play Cyberpunk. It's a neat little look into a digital dystopia. Thought it was neat. Oh, and in the beginning when Jackie... What happened with Jackie, I was like, ugh. I was just starting to like him. I was like, no, Jackie! Yeah. Totally recommend it. And I don't know how much it is nowadays, but I'm assuming that it's still like $60. So if you want to drop AAA prices on it, then totally worth it, in my opinion. And I could run it on a 1070 Ti, so not now granted on the lowest settings I could make it, but still not so bad. Oof! Why is the elevator on fire? That's because someone wasn't in the elevator, and so we couldn't push the button, so someone was screwing around, and the elevator had time to get caught on fire. Are there certain types that tend to be more into something, how to make and manage money, other than like an ENTJ or ISTJ? You can be into a lot of things. You can be into the idea of making money, but if you don't have a strong preference for either, you know, extroverted thinking, or if your introverted sensing programming, you know, didn't tell you that the most important thing in life was making money, or if you don't have a preference for your own future and really considering it, then you can be into it for shorter periods of time. And seemingly, depending on where that, you know, certain those functions land in your cognitive function preferences, that can happen more or less frequently. So if you are, what's a good one? Let's do an intuitive. Let's say INFP. So an INFP, are they going to be super into making and or managing money? If they come from a family of business people that were all about that life and that was the most important thing about them, then that programming could very easily seep its way into your programming as an INFP. So that could happen. But if you had parents that were just concerned with you being happy and doing, you know, whatever it is that makes you happy, and they try to give you as best a child as they could and, you know, make you feel good about stuff, then okay, you're missing that. You're missing that bit of programming that would make you into it. You know, you could, however, that there should be introverted intuition as more of a preference than, let's say, some other functions. So you may get the idea that you could make a whole lot of money, and, you know, and move yourself up at a place of power or authority so that you can make a lot of money and then donate most of it to other people. That could happen, but even if you had that plan, how often are you going to be doing that, and how often are you going to be more just kind of thinking about how people feel about stuff? The answer, of course, being the latter. You're not going to be spending as much time focusing on your introverted intuition. And so, can they get into it? Yes, but it's not going to supersede, unless they've got, you know, that introverted sensing programming, it's not going to supersede what's going to be plaguing their mind most of the time. And so you're not going to see them just be hyper successful in, you know, just a few short years of, you know, coming up with their own idea or focusing on their own plans for things. it takes a lot for them, and especially if they're doing it solo. Now, if they had a lot of help and someone who was willing to manage that other side of what it means to be successful, or what it takes to get to become successful, then they could. But granted, once again, it's not them. It was someone else kind of doing the heavy lifting. Reminds me of your Mr. Beast typing video. Yes, Mr. Beast, very seemingly a very sweet young man. He wanted to donate money to people and help people out, and for him, the best way to do that was to just throw money at the problem. So if you're sad about stuff or you're having a bad time, here's a bunch of money. And, good on him. I hope that it works for those people. But yes, Mr. Beast obviously has a lot of help, so that he can, see his goals and dreams realized. Now, here's the thing about Mr. Beast, though, is that he has a stronger preference for introverted intuition than many other personalities. So he wants to see that stuff get done. And so, he gets it done. I mean, granted, he does whatever it is he's supposed to do in that particular exchange of labor. But, he has other people that are managing virtually everything else, so he gets help. Would those be extroverted thinking? Would those with extroverted thinking be the types who like to push books at others to get them to learn about something? Unfortunately, yes. Extroverted thinking concerns itself with finding what most people believe to be correct. So they're going to go for books, they're going to go for popular information outlets, so like go to YouTube, or what is the consensus on, extroverted thinkers are the ones that go to personality database to get, in quote, correct typings of people. Which personality database is pretty hit or miss. Sometimes they get it right. Like the new Joker, Joaquin Phoenix Joker, INFP. Absolutely. Very stereotypical. And I imagine that's why most people, came to that conclusion. But then they say things like Gandalf's an INTJ. And of course, that would boggle my mind if I were, 8 years younger and I was still kind of figuring out MBTI. That would have boggled, that would have boggled the mind a little bit. But understanding what I know now about what people think about cognitive functions and how they're expressed, it makes a lot of sense that people would think that he was an INTJ without having any real-world experience with that kind of a typing. But yeah, so for example, I tell people, don't just take my word for it. If it makes sense to you and you want to go with it, great, I'm not going to stop you. But I also recommend that, hey, what you should do, apply that introverted thinking, take what I say, use it in real life. Or better yet, go read the cognitive functions for yourself, and then see if that works in real life for you. See if you are seeing the correlation. Because I want you to understand it. I don't want you to just believe what I say. I want you to have your own personal experiments and trying it out, and so that you can have your own, you can figure it out for yourself. That's introverted thinking. Spending time to think about something logically and come to your own personal conclusions about stuff. Do that. Don't just take what I say. When I say that all ISFJs have RBF, don't just believe what I, don't just believe it. Just go out there and see if you can find an ISFJ, and then stalk them. I guess. Not stalk. Don't stalk people. That's vaguely wrong. Just pay attention to them, and then see if you can find that RBF in real life. So, do that. Introverted think, don't extroverted think. Well, I mean, extroverted think when it's appropriate, when you just need a quick answer about things, sure. Extroverted thinkers are some of the single most successful people in our society, and it's because they didn't spend a lot of time pondering whether or not what they were reading was right or wrong. They just absorbed it because other people said it was right, and then they moved on with their life. And they are some of the most successful people on the planet. They don't screw around. They want success. I want to get them answers. Gee, manies, I'm just getting shot up. Thankfully, as a psyker, I can block both melee and ranged attacks, but I can only block ranged attacks if I'm actually looking at the target. So, let's see. Is anyone gonna pick me up? To be more, blah blah blah, and so maybe I should try more personal experiments next time I go out in public. Absolutely, try an experiment. See if you can find all the introverted sensors in your immediate area. You know, who's dressed pretty normally, who's not going out of their way to, make a statement about how they dress or how they look. You know, just normal, everyday people. See how many introverted sensors you can spot. That should be one of the easier ones.
My rules. You shall do as I say, sweet brute.
I want to get that. I'm gonna get that scripture.
Ogrin, look, ammunition for you. Where is everyone?
I can't get up there. What? No, I'm not leaving until I get that script. Let's see. Would those with? So can I jump this way? Yes, I can. Great. Got it. Okay. Would those with introverted thinking be the types to think or say, I want to figure it out myself? I say that a lot even when I know there's probably a quick and easy way to do something if I just looked it up. Yes, introverted thinking does do that. However, I have met a number of, let's say, ISFPs that say the same thing. They'll say, no, I'll try to figure it out. And so, it just depends on what it is. If you ask if we're an ENTP and we're talking about human psychology, yeah, they're gonna be like, yeah, I'll figure it out. I want the personal challenge of figuring out the pattern recognition. I want to know what patterns I'm observing and see if I can put that into a system that other people could understand. Maybe. Now, granted, I don't do that for other people. I do it for myself. But whereas an ISFP, if you say something like, for example, hey, should we have a garden in the backyard, and should we look this up to find out? I've known a number of ISFPs that would rather take it upon themselves to try and figure it out. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to turn out well at all. They may miss a few steps here and there. But I have known on occasion an ISFP will want to try to figure out something more in the physical realm, to prove to themselves and others that they can figure some stuff out. But just it doesn't happen very often, and they're not always going to be correct. But ENTPs, they don't oftentimes want to just tell someone that they're going to figure it out. Usually it's just a lot of nodding and saying, yeah, okay, and then that's when the person that's talking to you says, are you even listening to what I said? And then you're going to be like, kind of. Right, but, don't worry, I got the gist of what you were asking about, and I'll try and figure it out, don't worry. But I usually use that as an excuse to not do anything, so I don't have to do something immediately. Which, by the way, in case anyone's wondering, the reason that I have appointments for typings is usually because I'm busy doing something else, and it's usually something not productive, and I would rather be doing that at that very specific moment. And so, most cases, though, if you schedule for a typing and it's just like, maybe a few hours from now, I'll be like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do it same day. But I don't enjoy it when people spring on me, that someone springs on me that I need to be doing something right now. So I don't like to be surprised in that regard. Let's see. Isn't introverted intuition correlated with pattern recognition, not TI? So I've heard it described as trying to organize thoughts into patterns, but for that very specific thing, no, it's been my experience that. So here's the thing: if introverted intuition is about pattern recognition, like legitimately, like seeing how people behave and then reacting to it or knowing what they're going to do next, like that, in terms of actual pattern recognition, then virtually, what would I say? Something like 50% of the U.S. population is an introverted intuitive. Can't do that. I refuse to do that. So, so when it comes to pattern recognition, it's understanding how a lot of patterns work, finding out what comes next in the pattern. That requires thought. That requires thinking. That requires, as I said, it requires deductive reasoning, which is, of course, how introverted thinking is described. I've heard some people describe introverted intuition as organizing patterns and believing that that was pattern recognition. So that means, and if that's the case, then what you're going to end up seeing is a lot of ESTPs, ENTPs, ISTPs, INTPs are actually all introverted intuitives because that's how they live their life, is through pattern recognition. Making sure that everything makes sense, following the congruency of thought. So I don't know how those other people would describe pattern recognition, or if they just have a different definition for that cognitive function. But I'm afraid that saying that introverted intuition is about pattern recognition, which would involve, of course, pointing out when the pattern doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, you're going to have to type a lot of introverted thinkers as introverted intuitives, specifically. So I'm afraid, no. In real life, you cannot say that that introverted intuition is pattern recognition, because then most of your population is going to be, too much of your population is going to be a preferenced introverted intuitive. So they talk about recognizing the pattern in their ideas, which can make sense when it's, when they're thinking about their ideas for themselves. They need to make sure that those ideas make sense for themselves. So that is following a pattern, absolutely. But in terms of general pattern recognition, like in life and in reality, no, that's not what introverted intuitive means. Otherwise, as I said, everyone, or a large portion of people, are going to be preferenced introverted intuitives, which we know is nonsense. So let's see. So then, would high introverted thinking correlate with high IQ? Because tests and the whatnot, basically patterns, and what comes next. Yes, when you're taking an IQ test, what the IQ tests are trying to do is they're trying to force you to flex your extroverted intuition and your introverted thinking. That's what it's trying to do. So as one would suspect, yes, people that have a preference for extroverted intuition and introverted thinking, they may end up scoring a bit higher than some of the other personalities. But everyone has all 8 functions, and so it really comes down to how well in that situation can you flex your introverted thinking and your extroverted intuition. How well can you flex? That's why we know, for example, Albert Einstein, a very classic INTP character, very smart man. But no, general pattern recognition is the domain of introverted thinking, not introverted intuition. But yes, introverted intuitives do organize patterns for them. What ideas work for me? What's good for me? Focus on those things. It's just semantics at that point, I suppose. But let me go ahead and Bring this up.
I'm hearing our flight lieutenant wanting to discuss protocol with you.
Let's see.
Is that so?
Brainstorm internally with themselves, blah, blah, blah. Trust in their insights. Yes. So, introverted intuition, and this is from the MBTI website, Myers-Briggs.org, if you don't know about it. Introverted intuition, which it's specific. So this is, it says INFJ, INTJ, so that would be introverted intuition, the lead position, can appear visionary, connects unconscious images, themes, and connections to see things in a new way. Brainstorms internally with themselves, trusts and relies on inner insights, which may be hard for others to understand, keyword visioning. Now, emphasis on that hard to understand thing. They have a difficult time trying to articulate why their ideas are the best. And that's whether it's INFJ or INTJ. They may have a more difficult time, and oftentimes it's because they don't have a lot of a reason to believe that their idea is the best idea. That's because I have pushed these people to give me more information, and you oftentimes hit a roadblock somewhere following that line of logic. You hit a roadblock. They have ideas. Now, of course, their best ideas are ideas for themselves. So I'm going to do good in school, and then I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to join the military, and then I'm going to use the money that I get from doing those things, and I will pursue this course of a career. I will, maybe go to college afterwards, and then I'm going to get this job, and then I'm going to keep moving up. All of that, in case you're wondering, my pattern recognition would tell me that these are ideas for them about how to gain a more successful life. That's what my pattern recognition tells me, is that they are very concerned with themselves and what they want. And how to live potentially a happier life. Oh. I'm getting old. So yeah, everyone has a level of pattern recognition, meaning that we all preference and use our introverted thinking to specific degrees. Why are ENFPs thought of as being analytical, but ESFPs are not? Is it due to extroverted intuition, allowing ENFPs to consider multiple possibilities and or the perspectives of others? And yes, your pattern recognition serves you well. In that, yes, that seems to be the main reason. ESFPs don't spend as much time considering the perspectives of other people. Trying to think of times in which that's not the case, but maybe as they get older, an ESFP may be more considerate of the perspectives of other people, but generally speaking, ESFPs are not as considerate. ENFPs spend more time in here than they spend out there, and so they tend to consider more possibilities, which leads to trying to analyze a problem from different angles before making a decision on something. Let's see, Dumb Truckus asks, hardest function to type, is there one? Yeah, typically it's introverted sensing. That, for most people getting into, so if you're getting into MBTI, there is a like 9.9 out of 10 chance that you are not yourself an introverted sensor. And people that are introverted sensors, they just seem like normal people to you. They're just normal. There's nothing particularly wrong about them. There's nothing particularly good about them. They're not wacky and weird, and they don't have a bunch of strange personality quirks. They're just normal, average people. And that can throw you off. I know it threw me off, trying to type introverted sensors. So it can throw you off. And then when you get an introverted sensor that's actually into something that's a little like, so you're talking to an ESTJ or an ESFJ, and they're not being normal about a particular subject, that can, that looks strange. It's that that by itself will look weird. And so trying to type an introverted sensor that's trying to get into more abstract topics, that can be tough. It takes a lot of experience to notice all the little the tips and tricks for trying to pick out a cognitive function preference. But especially if it's an introverted sensor that's trying to behave like another personality type, when they're going out of their way to try to do it. Now, granted, to me, now I've been doing this for 10 years, so I can spot when someone's trying to use a function that they're clearly not experienced with. But to you, to other people that don't spend a lot of time doing or haven't spent a lot of time doing MBTI, you may get tripped up. I know that in the beginning I got tripped up. I would try to type someone as a certain type, and I would have been completely wrong. And then it took a lot of years, a lot of practice, a lot of experiments, so that I could fine tune it and really get it down. Ben Crichton, this is Darktide, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. It is a up to 4-player cooperative game, action RPG, which is my favorite genre, where you've got loadouts, different weapons, tons of different weapons. And there's 4 different classes. Then you've got the whole talent tree. It kind of flashed away, but they just recently overhauled the game, and so now, like this whole big old talent tree thing, that wasn't here just some weeks back. It's all brand new. There's different ways to take your one of 4 classes, different weapons, cosmetics, which cosmetics don't do anything. Obviously, that's why they're cosmetic. But yep, super fun. If you're into action RPGs and you like cooperative gameplay, I enjoy both of those things. So, Darktide, Warhammer 40,000 Darktide, super fun to play with friends and family. Lots of different build options now, different weapons, etc. And it's not $60. I think when it was brand new, the Fat Shark games, they had Vermintide, Vermintide 2, and now Darktide. They were like $40 on release. They're probably cheaper than that now. So, would recommend. On Steam. And don't look too bad either. Now, mind you, I'm running this game with a certain configuration setting called Potato Mode. And so this is the settings that I'm using now are actually below what the normal settings are for Darktide, like much lower than the lowest settings. So that's why I'm able to actually run the game at over 80 FPS. And I'm currently playing a Psyker. And if I were to live in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, that's probably what I would try to be a Psyker. Even though there's always a risk of you just kind of randomly exploding when you use your warp powers. Let's see. How long did it take you to start typing people accurately on a consistent basis? I'd say it took me about 4 years. Like, and I'm not saying like I was always wrong, and then after the 4-year mark, all of a sudden I got everyone right. Like, no, I was in the beginning. So, and much to my embarrassment, I think this was probably like a couple of months in to MBTI. So not very far into it at all. And I would swear up and down like 3, and this of course based on things that I had read about MBTI, which of course I figured shortly after was wrong. I'd swear up and down I knew like 3 INFJs, just based off of general descriptions that you would hear about INFJs, which I later found out were incorrect. But much to my embarrassment, yes, in the beginning I was believing that, I knew some INFJs. They were all over the place. It was kind of like, Eric Thor tier typing people, right at the beginning. And it took a while to really get that down. But you get a little bit better at it. You start accurately predicting people's behaviors and, knowing. What the cool party trick isn't predicting what someone's going to do next, although that is cool, and it does. And obviously, if you're as far into MBTI as I am, you will be able to do that. But the really cool thing was describing what someone's life was like beforehand, describing like their childhood and things like that. So if you for example, if you meet someone, let's say you met an ENTP. You're not going to meet an ENTP who didn't have some kind of, parent issue, right? Like, usually a big one, in most senses. Like, an ENTP is going to have issues following the rules. They will have gotten in trouble, a lot growing up, and they, they don't necessarily do well in school. They don't do their homework, those kinds of things. Like, you're being able to predict someone's, or not predict, but to describe to someone how their life has been on an aggregate basis, that's really cool, and a lot of people find that to be good enough of a reason to maybe get into MBTI. Wow, that's very impressive that you are aware of my cognitive function preferences and you were somehow able to tell me what my childhood was like. And so, but of course that's if you once again, if you have an actual, a real understanding of MBTI. I have met, over the past 10 years, I have met a lot of people who believed that they had an understanding of MBTI and were wrong. Understandably, there's not a, unless you're willing to, throw down the $3,000 to go to an MBTI class, a workshop thing, yeah. Otherwise, you have to figure out a whole lot of stuff on your own. Let's see, I always assumed the reason why I was really good at school subjects was because I had introverted sensing as my first function, but then after you typed me, I really think that that TE in the fourth, well, that's possible. Pen cap, I do not, now, this isn't anything, related to you, but I do not remember what I typed you as. So, I just know that you are one of the first people to say hello during my streams, but I do not recall what I typed you as. But you're saying extroverted thinking in the fourth position, so ISFP or INFP. Let's see here. Possession is more accurate. Position is more accurate. Yeah, I prefer to say position. I don't say slot anymore. Too many people were saying slot, so I decided to change up the word, and then too many people were saying function stack, so I'm like, no, I'm going to call it the function tower. Just anything I can do to be not doing the same thing as everyone else, even when apparently when it comes down to verbiage. I would prefer not to use the same words as everyone else. Same phrases. Ah! Big monster bad. Run. And, oh good, he left me alone. What the? Nope, that's bad. That's real bad. No! Whee! Nope. Alright. Alright, I need to take care of this guy. There we go. I got you, Jonathan. No! Alright. So, yes, pen cap, I guess I typed you as an ISFP. And I'll take your word for it. We have had a lot of ISFPs and ISTPs, more than I thought. More than I would have thought back, 5 years ago, most certainly. I figured that most people that would be interested in MBTI, which for the most part that rings true, are going to be extroverted intuitive preference people. So there's that. But so I would say, half the people that I end up typing are actually extroverted intuitive preference, and then the other half are about extroverted sensing preferenced. Typically ISTPs and ISFPs. Typically, so about half, which was very surprising, and it was actually kind of refreshing that there are other personality types out there that are interested in the typology. Now, granted, when it comes to ISFPs and ISTPs, they are more interested in learning about themselves, how they portray themselves to other people, and just wanting to know about how they do what they do. And that's understandable given that introverted intuition being the third position, and it comes out a little bit later in life. It's not something they oftentimes care about before the age of, let's say, 20. But we have been getting more. So, and there's been a few introverted sensing, but so far as I know, they have been ESTJs. I don't know if it's due to them wanting to better manage other people, or is it possibly, because they don't seemingly care about learning more about themselves. They seem to care more about just dealing with other people, and if there is a more objective way in which they can do that, which there is, and that's through MBTI. Absolutely. Speaking of which, I'm not, as I said, I'm not into socionics. And I have, however, I was talking with someone that was into socionics. That was their thing. And I had him do a public typing, and he typed me as, I don't know if anyone else is familiar with socionics, but he typed me as what was it? Bob, if you're there, do you remember what the type was? It SLE or something? Something like that? Was it SLI or something? And after reading the description of of whatever it was that he typed, I think it was SLI, it was so opposite of me that I would have had to have assumed that he did it due to personal reasons. But everyone else that I have, of course, spoken to a number of other people into socionics, and they said that if someone typed you as that, they were trolling you. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. Yes, he typed me as an ISTJ and MBTI, so I don't know if there's anyone else currently watching that knows about socionics and whether or not whatever, like SLI or something, I don't remember what it was, if that seems to fit me or if it doesn't fit me, or what you think my socionics type is, let me know. I'm curious to see how often his understanding is different than the understanding of others in general. So I would like to. I'm always interested. So I do believe that, like I said, if you try to get too high resolution with people, you're more oftentimes going to get wrong. That's why fortune tellers, they try to keep their predictions of people fairly vague, pick up on context clues about your character, whether it's how you dress, how you respond to questions, things like that. It's a tale as old as time, and some people are good at it, and some people are not. No, die, bomber. Got him. Also, if I do stream games anymore, I make sure that the music is not on, so that there's no way I can get any kind of a copyright claim to my streams. Because I had that happen with Vampire the Masquerade. I wanted to keep playing Vampire the Masquerade, but one of the songs in one of the bars got a copyright claim on it. Not a strike, just a claim. So I just figured it was easier that way. So now all you're going to hear is explosions. I think I'm a gunner. Anyway, more questions. How long have we been streaming for? About an hour. I think we were on almost 2 hours when did I start streaming? It was like 2 o'clock. What time is it now? It's 5:05. All right, so we've got about an hour left, roughly, in the stream today. And I want to thank everyone for being here, and thank you for coming back after there was some technical issues. I had to restart the machine, but we're back. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Join my Discord. Sign up to get typed. Super fun stuff. We do Movie Monday still. Also, my Discord is hosting some kind of creative writing thing. I'm not 100% on that. That's more of a Lady V kind of thing, but it's supposed to be about like writing a story between 2,000 and 20,000 words, which is a lot, and seeing who wins. I'm not sure what the prizes are. You'll have to look more into that on my Discord. See if you can find out. Okay. I do not enjoy fighting chaos spawns. They are bad. And it's still attacking me even though everyone else is pounding away at it elsewhere. Go away! Terrible monster. Gee, knees. Oh. Goodness. No! No, no, no! He grabbed me. What things frustrate you? I'm sure that there are a number of things in life that frustrate me, but the one that first came to mind was people who don't spend enough time thinking before making a decision. That is very frustrating to me. I want people to use their brainy parts before coming to a conclusion about things. Just take some extra time, take a few minutes, and really think about what you're saying and find out whether or not it's correct, or maybe there's some holes in the logic here and there. Just spend some time thinking about it. That's what I urge people to do, and when I see that not happening, when I see people not thinking critically on a subject, I get frustrated. I try not to express it. I'm usually very poker-faced. I'm at maximum chill at all times, but that is frustrating, for sure. Some bosses on Elden Ring frustrate me, especially if I'm playing the wrong theme of character to deal with the situation. That can be very frustrating. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're just in a bad spot, it looks like. We don't have enough shooty people, I guess. Get a little frustrated playing Dark Tide here and again. Let me go save this guy. Right after I heal. Oh, goodness. I get frustrated on Dark Tide because the characters, or the NPCs that are trying to come at you, oftentimes don't have a sound. They're just incredibly silent, so they attack you from like that. The only thing I heard was the sound of my character about to get hit, and the giant Ogren wearing super plate armor made zero sounds, no footsteps, no rumbling, nothing. And I just got slapped in the back for all of my HP. So, that's not fun. Very frustrating at times. So. He's dead. Let's see, that would be hard for introverted feeling users because FI makes decisions quick, right? They can make decisions quickly. If it's a more complicated problem, like whether or not we should be sending money to other parts of the world to save the starving kids, most introverted feelers are going to be like, oh yeah, we need to do whatever we can to help the starving children out there. Like, okay, well, what if it's a more complex issue? What if it's, we need to give away so much money that a quarter of our own population starves, but it will help 50% of the population in another country. Okay, well, they need to see how they feel about that, and it may take a moment to figure that out. But in most cases, you know, in terms of like normal conversation, you're just like, hey, do you like cheesecake? Yay or nay? Yeah, cheesecake tastes good. It's, you know, I feel pleasant after I eat it, which I don't feel pleasant. I usually just feel guilt after eating it, but it depends on the topic. But yes, in normal everyday conversation, introverted feelers, you know, do you like this? Do you like that? Yes, no, a lot, a little. Very quick for a lot of things. The same goes with introverted thinking, though. There's just introverted thinking tends to overcomplicate maybe some issues on occasion, and so if you introverted thinking, use your deductive reasoning to solve this problem. What's 2 plus 2? Oh, okay, well that's 4. What about 5 plus 5? No, it's 10. Okay, well, things like that. Sure, simple, not as complex, etc. But if you're trying to determine whether or not a course of action is going to make sense and work, like if you're trying to, let's say, you're engineering a new computer program, that may require a little more time to think about it. Introverted thinking desires an understanding of the situation so that it can more accurately propose a solution or give a more accurate response. It tries. And they're not always going to get it right either. Introverted thinking does not always get it right. When I was young, when you're younger, you're missing data points. When you're missing data points, you may end up making conclusions that aren't entirely correct. Let's see. You consider ENTPs as Machiavellian when dark, for example? When dark? I'd like to think that ENTPs are almost always on the dark of things. Pessimists. Truly. Let's see. Machiavellian. Now, Machiavellian. Is that the one where it's like a measurement for sociopath? No, because I remember taking a test for it before, and for some reason the definition for Machiavellian it escapes me. Don't we worry though. I have the internet. Can't trust people. Cunning, scheming, unscrupulous. Yeah, it's the unscrupulous part. That's where I got sociopathic from. The thing, I don't think it's inherently an ENTP thing to be Machiavellian. I think that they tend to want to be cunning and scheming, but it doesn't necessarily need to be for any super benefit to themselves or other people. And when it comes to things like being unscrupulous, which synonym might be unethical, is that, well, you're talking to an ENTP about ethics. What are ethics really? Are ethics really just these subjective things where it's good in one place, bad in another? And who am I, as the ENTP, to decide what's more ethical than something else? And then while you're having that discussion, you're taking candy from a baby. Who's to say that I'm doing something wrong? Well, you know, I'm taking candy from this child because, well, I don't want the child to get addicted to sweets. I don't want the child to accidentally choke on it. I'll make up whatever kind of rationalization I need for taking candy from that baby. And as ethics, you know, what are those? Is it right or wrong to cheat on your spouse? Seems more of a matter of opinion, really. So, is it truly right or wrong? Would I do it? Would I not do it? That's really all we can answer. Is would I do something? Would I not do something? And then under what circumstances would I do it? So yes, the unscrupulous portion of it made sense in terms of, you know, whether or not ENTPs are more Machiavellian. Sure, they can be cunning. Yeah, they can be scheming. But it's that unscrupulous part that caught my attention. Why do you think ENTPs are pessimistic? Is it from considering all the things that could go wrong? I've found that my pessimism does seemingly it seemingly stems from knowing in all the numerous ways in which someone's dumbass idea can go wrong, and there are a lot of I've had a great number of those instances in my life where people just tend to not think things through a little bit. Consider all the possibilities before making, or do your best to consider as many possibilities before making a decision. That's definitely something that I espouse that behavior. I think, though, the pessimism has come from a great number of people going through with their plans, having them screw me over or screw over other people. And I think that best case scenario, there's a great number of people that are too silly to be making decisions for themselves or other people. And that's your best case scenario. Worst case, people tend to just want to harm other people. And they don't really care about what it's going to do to someone when they make a decision. So I'm a little bit on the pessimistic side. And certainly a twinge of misanthropy. I think that's there as well. Misanthropic. I think that's the fate of all ENTPs. You can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. And as much as I want to ignore reality, I still have things happen to me that I either like or don't like. Oftentimes dislike. Yep, there we go. I'm down. Knowing people and knowing most people suck. Yeah, most people suck. And like I said, best case scenario, they they suck and they can't do anything about it. They don't realize that they suck. They don't realize that they're, causing more harm than good. They don't. It's not a part of their preferences. A preference for knowing that would be extroverted intuition. Not everyone has a preference for it, so they can't help it, and that they don't realize that what they're doing is going to cause harm to other people, and that means you suck whether you realize it or not. So yeah, best case scenario. Best case scenario, someone is just a sucky person and they don't realize they're a sucky person. And there are a number of other people that are a sucky person and they know they're being a sucky person and they have no desire to change. All right, that should be the whole team. This is a rare miss. On my psycho character, I almost never lose a match with a full team wipe on my finished psycho character. That does not happen very often, but sometimes you play and you're basically doing it solo. And that can be a problem.
Curse ye all for worthless swine!
Now, granted, I've been a little bit distracted playing, doing the thing. All right, catch you later. Thank you, Bob. Your questions are always wonderful. Let's see. Do you have any general questions you ask people when typing them? I do have general questions, yes. Now, I would normally like to talk about those general questions, but because of the nature of the tests and the nature of this community at large, people will want to be perceived as a certain personality type. Like, a lot of people do not come to me with the genuine desire to find out what cognitive functions they preference based on their reality, based on how they do things. What they want to do is come to me and give them a diagnosis of some kind of rare personality. That's what they want. And so I've had a number of people try their best to prepare for it. Those ones are usually easier to find out because they read about cognitive functions that they should be preferencing for this particular personality. Then they'll come at me and then it'll be like wrong. It'll be the wrong definition. And so they try to exert a certain behavior that does not lead them to the diagnosis that they want. And in this particular instance, I do ask some general questions, but I don't want to make them as publicly known. Otherwise, people start getting the idea to prepare for the test so that they can try to give me a personality type that they are not. So, because I don't want to give you the personality type that you want, I want to give you the personality type that you are. It does not help you to be mistyped. That is not helpful. If anything, it simply does more damage to the community. However, here's a freebie one. I usually ask people how well they did in school, and that's so whether they got the good grades, they were very focused on school, and then whether or not they went into college, and if they were very focused on that. Usually, that leads me to a prognosis of either introverted sensing or introverted intuition. It takes a level of conscientiousness to get through school, obviously, because school in the United States anyway is about obedience, not actual knowledge. It's more about the obedience. That's what they care about. They want to make sure that you have the willpower or the level of conscientiousness required to get through school. Therefore, we can trust that in a job setting. So that's why when people have been, I've been hearing a lot of people complain about how they haven't been able to find work, even though they have a bachelor's degree. And I would ask them, "Oh, you have a bachelor's degree in what?" And then they would tell me they'd either say, "Well, why does that matter?" Or they would say, it's in some field that had nothing to do with the kind of job they were getting into. And I'm like, well, then why does it matter if you have a bachelor's degree? Well, it turns out it's just that they're trying to prove that they're willing to put in the time and effort to do what someone else tells them to do. Conscientiousness, adhering to your duty, which comes from oftentimes a strong preference for introverted sensing or introverted intuition, which a lot of people are not. A lot of the there are a number of people that aren't quite grasping that yet. Let's see. Are you making your own type of test? I guess it's my own type of test. I have a conversation with someone back and forth, and I ask, some generalized questions, or I will probe them for more questions. Like if I ask them, hey, do you spend a lot of time playing video games? And they'll say, yeah, I spend a little bit of time playing video games. I'm like, great. What video games do you play? And then, of course, if they don't really play video games, I'll ask them, well, why don't you play video games? And they'll say, well, it's because I like going outside. I like hiking. I like going to the gym. I like trying to go to the club and chat up the girls, or things like that. But no, in terms of online testing, just pen and paper kind of tests. I don't do pen and paper tests. I do not do those. I found that when people have the time to more thoughtfully answer a question, they tend to come up with more wacky results. So I don't have people write down answers on a test and you get back to me the next day. I want to hear your candid, immediate responses to things. That's what I want to hear. I don't want people to get to a question and then take 10 minutes out trying to answer it. Like, no, you are aware of what you do. You are aware of how you live your life. That's what I want to hear about. I don't want you to write down, if I ask you, let's say it was a generalized question, how often, tell me about the last, tell me about a time that you did, that you abstracted, that you were pondering something that doesn't exist in reality, something non-tangible and whatnot. And then they take 10 minutes out and they harken back to a time like 8 years ago when they had this really neat idea about this one thing. That doesn't help me. I'm looking for aggregate behavior. I want to know how you preference living your life. And someone coming up with an answer after, half thinking about it for half an hour, that doesn't help me determine a personality type. People can apply to my test by going to my Discord, which is somewhere. I'm sure I've got it down. It's either on the About Me section or something like that. Go to my Discord. There is a section for applications. After you get, right now, we're currently doing some kind of verification thing where if we got someone who wants to join the server, because we have a lot of people that just kind of join it and don't do anything, or we have a lot of people, or we have not a lot, but we have some number of people that kind of just join the Discord and they don't care about MBTI. They usually just want to come in and troll or disrupt things. So at the moment, there's been this kind of verification thing where you join the Discord, then you pick your roles, and then either myself or Lady V will just ask you some very basic questions, and then verify you as not a robot, and then you can join in. But once you're in there, there's just an application section on the Discord, and you just type in hi, I'm so and so, and I would like to be typed. What time is best, that kind of a thing. And then Lady V is usually the one that does that, and she'll tell you about a time that you can do that. Nothing terribly complicated. Need a haircut.
It is not I who quarrels.
Too much hair.
Instruct her to learn more discipline.
So yes. Geez. Almost there. About 30 minutes left in the stream, roughly. And it's just way too hot in here. Oof. Awful. So yeah, if you'd like, you can apply there, and then to get typed to find out more about you. What's the, what is the, what kinds of jobs that you might want to decide getting into. As for relationship things, I've had a number of people ask me about relationship-related stuff, and I just tell them the same thing. Look for common interests, not common functions. Yes, it's a great Discord. Just be respectful, or Ven will smite you. She is not that vengeful, but we've had a number of cases where things kind of got blown out of proportion, usually by, let's say one person in particular. They do a lot of bad things. For example, they post things that they're absolutely not allowed to be posting, or they're being outwardly disrespectful towards a moderator, choosing to not adhere to the rules, which I don't have many rules, by the way. and they just refuse not to. And then after they get punished in some way, then they yell, kick, and scream about it, and come complain to me, or they'll complain to another moderator about this was unjustified, whatever. And then the point is they like to yell and scream a lot about being treated unfairly after posting things that are absolutely not allowed to be posted in my Discord. But yes, it's a great Discord, and just be generally respectful to other human beings. It helps a lot. I was on a rant about something before that. I can't remember what it was. Oh well. Oh goodness. I am sweating, and it's almost wintertime. Open the door up a little bit. Oh. Anyway, let's see here. I'm not getting used to the idea of not having a co-host. I appreciated my co-hosts, but they're busy. Harley has been busy with family stuff, and Van has other work-related things that cause her to have a bit of a wacky sleep schedule. I think she was still asleep when I started this stream. She might still be asleep. I'm not sure. Minimalist Martian. What game is this? This is Darktide. Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. Action RPG. You've got melee weapons, ranged weapons. I don't have... I usually sell a lot of them because this character in particular is more or less maxed out. And there's like little curios, think of them as like talismans or charms that do other random things for your character. And then you got cosmetics, and you have a whole big old talent tree. And each of the 4 classes has their own talent tree with different abilities, different effects. And then you go on missions. I just hit the random button and it throws me into somebody's team, where it's a up to 4-player cooperative, and you fight against hordes of monsters, special monsters, disabler monsters. It's kind of like Left 4 Dead, but as an actual RPG where you've got talents and weapon options and permanent additions to your character, things like that. Totally worth the $40. I imagine it's on sale these days.
System records indicate that the primary smelter at Manufactorum HL1736 has been taken offline. Metaphysical corruption is suspected.
Goodness, it's warm. Action RPGs are my favorite genre of games, so Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, Monster Hunter, Darktide, or any variations thereof, The Witcher, Kingdom Hearts, Vampire the Masquerade. Action RPGs, absolute favorite. It allows me to have some more Twitch-based practice where I actually have to manually move the character and choose how they're going to fight, while at the same time picking out their skills and abilities to further enhance the way that I would like to play the game.
Beloved, it's not nice here.
Atmosphere scrubbers are functioning. This is a temporary malaise.
Lots of combinations. The possibilities are endless. Not literally endless. I'm sure you could eventually hit the bottom somewhere, but...
Something tells me this place is significant.
Cyberpunk 2077, in terms of recent open world action RPGs, Cyberpunk was pretty cool. Would recommend that too, although that's got a heftier price tag. And it's also not cooperative. Starfield, I would enjoy Starfield more, but they had the most atrocious inventory system that I've seen in a long time. And my computer is having not a great time trying to run that game. I'm most of the time playing the game at like 44 FPS, and that's harmful to my eyes. Like, I can handle like 50 FPS, doesn't bother me all that much. yeah, then anything higher than that is just gravy. But 45 FPS and lower, it's got that look to it, and what it really bothers me is that Starfield is, of course, well, it's an action RPG, and so when you're using firearms, you know, you want to be precise, and so when my computer is running the game at lower frames, it's more difficult for me to aim. I like quick react, you know, like snapshot things. It's more difficult, so I try to get as many frames as I can, and to hell with how the game looks, so long as it runs smooth. Where is my team? Oh my goodness. Team's somehow getting stuck with these monsters, and I would love to help. Seems how I'm going to end up doing the most damage to them out of everyone here. But I'm just constantly trying to take out special targets. Yep. And there's a sniper out there someplace, too. No! Jeez. Okay. Don't worry, boys. I took them all out. There you are. Can't get a lock on them. Okay, anyways. Skyrim is good, but far from go. Yeah, if I do play Skyrim, I haven't played it in, it's probably been about a year and a half or so, just to, you know, the downloading process. I have to mod it to death, just about. It's almost not the same game anymore, as to how much I need to mod it to be more entertaining. Like the camping mods, for example, I like the idea of being able to, you know, scavenge for things that I need, like, you know, getting the firewood, living away from the cities and whatnot, and then, of course, having to eat food. I wanted a little bit more immersion. And that's my biggest problem with Bethesda games, is that I tend to lose my immersion very quickly. And so I usually have to mod them to death. And then, you know, I also oftentimes install other mods that cannot be mentioned here on YouTube. So, let's see. Theoretically, imagine if you got sucked into the game you're playing right now and you have to choose 3 types to be your team. Which would you choose? I would go with just a balanced team of all 4 classes. I think that'd be fine. All of them. Now, that's also assuming that I got to pick the kinds of talents that they would be using, the kinds of weapons and equipment. Then I would do that and have them play themselves. But I would need to pick out some things, because I'm not gonna take a zealot that isn't a little more well balanced. A lot of zealots tend to go one way or the other with their combat styles. Either they go straight range, they go straight melee, and doing either one can tend to leave your team without a character, because they end up dying or not being effective. I recommend Enderal Forgotten Stories mod. Yeah, that sounds like it could be fun. I love Forgotten Stories. Mythology is fun. Let's see what else we got here. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is the greatest of all time. I have heard so many good things about a game that I have never played. Never played Battlefront. Apparently my team forgot that there was a behind them area that they need to be checking. It's a weekend. You oftentimes when you play multiplayer games on a weekend, you get the players that only ever play on the weekend. And so, not as experienced. What type is most likely to info dump? You mean like exposition, spread rumors? What kind of info are we dumping? So I'm not sure. Oh, okay, he meant MBTI types, which I would probably go with a lot. It would probably be a lot of ESTP in that. 1 ISTP, 2 ESTPs, and then me. I trust, like, I love coming up with wacky, crazy build ideas for things that absolutely are not going to work. But, you know, it was fun to try out the idea and see, you know, what positives that I could learn from trying out something so weird. But in reality, if I'm trying to survive and I want my team to live, I'm going to go with the people that want to min-max and don't care, and they're not going to care that much about the weird, wacky, convoluted stuff. I want them to come up with the ideas that are absolutely going to work more often than not. And that's where you got to go with IST, you know, an ISTP and some ESTPs. And I say ISTP because sometimes you do need that, you know, berserker guy who needs to, you know, that fearless character that's willing to run in there and trust their reflexes to win the fight. Sometimes you need that. Just make sure you keep them covered. I'm obsessively sharing info to a friend about a subject that I'm assuming it says you. I'd like to be able to read the whole sentence, but there's this stupid heart emoji that won't go away, and I can't get rid of it. So I have a difficult time actually seeing the full sentence there. But like obsessively sharing info to a friend about a subject currently interested in. So I've known INTPs to do a lot of that. That's what my friend Michael has done to me for the past 20 years, is to tell me about stuff that I may or may not have been interested in. Now, thankfully, most of what he brings up, I at least have something to say about it. So there's that. So it's not so bad. But okay, obsessively sharing info to a friend about a subject you're currently interested in. So we're talking about a personality type that wants to share information about something that they are personally interested in which case it could be any personality could do that. I've known ISFPs will do that, ESFPs, INTPs, ENTPs, of course, when they're young. ESTPs don't seem to do it all that often. They usually have a good feel for what people are going to be interested in. So they tend not to bring up topics that people don't care about. But I'd say that, yeah, I've talked to ESFJs, ESTJs. They enjoy dumping information onto people. Now, the real question is, do they notice that you care, or are they trying to explain the subject in such a manner that might give you some more relatability so that you can have a conversation, or are they just saying stuff just to say it, and because they wanted to just say it to someone? You know, that's more or less what you're looking for. I'm trying to determine a type for someone based on that. Do they care that you don't care? Try and find out. As for the obsessively sharing, is there a type that's always doing that? Like, if you're talking about a type that's always talking about things and that's likely that no one else cares, ESFPs tend to do that a lot. A lot. So, have you ever been interested in other psychology subjects or ideas beyond MBTI? Usually, if I do have an interest, it's a short-lived one. So it's like, oh, you hear about socionics. Okay, I was interested for about 5 minutes, and then I started reading about it, and I was like, okay, this is not something that I think I can use. It's not something that I believe that I need to use, or it's going to lead me to some dead ends, or it's trying to do some astrology stuff where it tries to predict, the kinds of foods someone's going to enjoy, kinds of things. No, I don't know. So my interest is oftentimes very short-lived. It's, even with, for example, Enneagram, which is strange because most people want to use Enneagram in conjunction with MBTI. It's supposed to describe the fears that someone has, and I had some disagreements about that kind of a system and what it was trying to measure. So I didn't put as much interest in it as I could have. Jeez. Let's see, though. there was a time where I wanted to know about astrology. I was like, is there something to this? Maybe I can find some meaning in this astrology. And then I found out, no. I could not. Unfortunately, I could not. I would go and talk to these experienced astrologists, if that's obviously that's not what they're, astrology people, and I would ask them about, I do a pretty standard test. I would say, look, what do you think? I'd talk to them for 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes, whatever time that they require, and I would say, okay, I need you to now tell me what my astrological sign is based on how I behave. I have gotten everything except my actual astrological sign. So people called me, I think one of the more common ones was Capricorn. I don't know what a Capricorn is supposed to be. I don't know how they're supposed to behave, but people say I'm oftentimes I get Capricorn as a result. That is not my that is not the time of year in which I was born. So if there's anyone still watching the stream, you can guess if you know astrology at all. I mean, you can guess as to what my astrological sign is based on my behavior, and see if you get it right. But as I pointed out, it doesn't seem to be accurate.
Beloved, which way is the smelter?
Put it to good use, then.
No more Ranger! Says you have to die! Oh, that's quite disgusting.
No, astrology is a no-go. If you dive into astronomy, they usually laugh and are like, no, the stars and moons don't correlate to our moods and our personality. I have not seen enough of a correlation to believe that astrology is accurate enough to be widely used as a system for understanding someone's personality. Yeah, the team is having a real problem dealing with... that explains it, actually. My score is way too high. Why is Come on, guys. There we go.
Oh, I'm sure he's nothing of the sort.
Usually it frustrates me in Darktide when you have people who are trying to build for a specific way of playing the game that doesn't revolve around handling as many situations as possible. Like I've seen, for example, zealots who only build their character around taking out trash monsters, and that's it. And then when it finally comes to like the elites that you can't just slaughter in one hit, they all of a sudden like have to step back and then leave your team high and dry because they can't deal with the situation, which is what's been happening here. The players that I'm currently playing with are not geared for handling multiple situations. They're geared for, it seems, handling trash. Whoa. Oh no. Oh, whew. Got it. Woo! Now I have to try and save my whole team. Woo. Okay. Did it. Anyways, what's next?
What a splendid healer station.
What was I talking about? I forgot. And they took the last healing thingy. Okay. Great. So yes, astrology, not so much. I think the few people that I have talked to about socionics, it seemed to me that it was, for the most part, MBTI. I recently read some descriptions off of a website that, it was like some GitHub website that had a bunch of links to different... I wanted to say the descriptions I was reading was for the F. And for the most part, I was able, just reading the description, I was able to tell the person what their MBTI version of that type was. And so my understanding of how personalities generally behave was congruent with a great deal of what I read. So it seemed to me that I guess sociology is just MBTI, maybe slightly more complicated, or it goes further into descriptions of overall behavior, which I've already done. It's how I describe these personalities to other people. So it seems like there's obviously some correlation there. So it's just, I guess it would be maybe more complicated. I think that what I do in regards to sociology is I go out of my way to describe the personality types in a way that most people can understand in relatable ways as best I can. And I think that's what sociology tries to do. So, guys, can you really not do any damage to this monster? It's just attacking me. Come on. Goodness. That was awful. So, yeah, there were some neat descriptions there. I would need to go back on some of the other ones, like, let's say, ISTJs, for example. There are a number, ESTJs and ISTJs, they do not emphasize enough that introverted sensing is a huge part of their life. It's literally their programming. So their interests and desires, things that they want out of life, are oftentimes going to be very different depending on where they grew up. So... Ooh. But yeah, I found some correlation there, is my point. And so I think that sociology may be unnecessarily complicated. Maybe. I think that if you're the average person just trying to learn more about, the cognitive functions and how they behave in people, sociology might be taking it a little too far. Maybe. I don't think it's necessary. I think that there are better, more relatable ways to explain things to people. But for the most part, if you are familiar with MBTI, then sociology isn't going to be really that far removed from that. Based on the descriptions I read, I want to say that the person, it started with an F, their name. And they had a whole bunch of them as well. There was like a bunch of different descriptions of the personalities, and I sincerely doubt that they're too much different from the other, except for one. Someone told me that it started with a G, and that one was wild. It was like way different from all the other ones. So I think I need to go back and read that one. Maybe that's what we'll do next stream, is I'll just bring up that website and then we'll go through the descriptions. Could be fun. Anyways, are there any more questions? 'Cause it's about closing time, everybody. And I had fun, as I normally do. Thank you all for joining. Please enjoy your Saturdays. Don't listen to me ramble on about MBTI too much. Go out there, find out, get your own personal experience for seeing if MBTI is working for you. Don't take my word for it. Read those cognitive function definitions and then see if you can find them in real life. It's on my Patreon videos. I like to hand out homework related to that. So, like, yeah, when you go outside, see how many extroverted sensors you find, kind of thing. Goodness. That's what I do. Oh, goodness. So yeah, if, any last second questions before I cut the stream off? Give it a moment. I know that there's a little bit of lag time between the stream and you guys.
Zealots may think they know the evil in human hearts, but imposters are confronted with it daily.
But if not, then I thank you all for joining. Thank you for putting up with the technical difficulties. That was very annoying. And I will talk to you all next weekend, or you, of course, can come to the Discord and come talk to me then. I'm always around. I'm gonna blow up, looks like. Alright. It was a fun stream. Thank you all for joining, and I'll talk